My entitled wife baby trapped me for my money. When I found out, I divorced her and now she's on the streets. I married my wife a few months ago. The first few weeks of our married life were great since we were spending a lot of time together. But out of nowhere, she began going out with her friends more than before. The reason I say this is because the last time she went out to a party without me was 2 years ago, so I was understandably worried. I had to go to work during the day, and she would be out partying during the night, so we began spending less time together. And even though I would ask her if she had fun or where she went, she would always change the topic and not answer my questions. I own a number of large businesses and have to constantly focus on them, so I can't really take time off unless there's a national holiday. But I really do love my work, so it's not a big deal for me. Although, something that was bugging me was that I hadn't been intimate with my wife for nearly a month. That is why I was so surprised when she told me she was pregnant out of nowhere. I brought up our bedroom life and that it was unlikely she was pregnant, but she said she had taken multiple tests. It was unexpected since we weren't planning a baby, but I was going to take full responsibility. I immediately made arrangements at work so I could attend to my wife and make sure she was comfortable at home. I also made an account for my soon-to-come baby in which I was going to deposit money for his or her future. My wife had also stopped going out and was more willing to spend time with me, so I was really happy. But then, my sister-in-law asked to meet up. She was my wife's sister, and they were so close that I would call them best friends. At first I thought that she wanted to talk about my wife's pregnancy, or maybe surprise her with some gifts for the baby, so I was excited to meet her. That's why I didn't bat an eye when she asked me to keep our meeting a secret. We decided to meet at a cafe. But as soon as she walked in, I noticed that she had a guilty look on her face. I asked her if she was alright, and she said that she has something she needs to tell me. I am tired of hiding the truth from my sister. I have seen how much you love her, and it's unfair to you. She has actually been having an affair with someone else. And this baby, she confessed to me that she's trying to trap you. She's planning on divorcing you after the baby is born and take a majority of your assets. My first instinct was to yell at her, because I thought that my wife would never do that. But I was shown proof in the form of text messages. She was literally bragging to her sister about how I had no suspicion about her activities. In those texts, she admitted that she only married me because I was a successful businessman with riches, and would never look at me again after divorcing me. I was also shown videos that my wife sent from her so-called parties, in which she was grinding on another guy. I don't understand why my wife would do that to me. I loved her and gave her my everything. In my head, I was working hard so that we, as in my wife and I, won't have any problems in the future. But while I was doing that, my wife was sleeping with another man and plotting against me. I was so distraught that I just broke down right there in public. My sister-in-law had to comfort me while I cried. I didn't want to go home to my wife right now, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So my sister-in-law said that I could sleep at her place for a while. She was single and living in a modest apartment that was a far cry from the house I bought for my wife and I, but I didn't care. She didn't judge me for being sad and crying over something like this, so her house was like a safe haven for me. I stayed there for 2 days, ignoring the calls and messages from my wife. But eventually, I decided that I had to confront her. I asked my sister-in-law to send me the evidence and went back home. Truth be told, there was still a part of me that hoped these texts and videos were fake, and that my wife was loyal to me. But I was being naive. I asked her if she was being unfaithful and if she didn't love me. Her reaction was, of course, to deny everything and accuse me of being controlling and toxic. Then I showed her the videos. At first, she tried to say that I forged them, saying things like I was destroying our life even though she was currently housing my baby inside her. But eventually, she did admit that she was having an affair for a short while. I knew that the short part was a lie, but I couldn't show her the texts as that would compromise her sister's identity. I got angry at her and asked her why she would do that to me, but her reaction this time truly broke my heart. She confessed that I wasn't giving her enough attention, so she looked for it elsewhere. But in her opinion, it didn't matter because we can move on together after she gives birth. She said she stuck by my side even when I was ignoring her, and that a small affair could be easily forgiven since I probably still loved her. She said it was my punishment for neglecting her. I called her crazy and said that I could never move on from being cheated on, and that our marriage was over. She kept mentioning the baby again and again, so I asked her to get a paternity test. We hadn't slept with each other in so long that I was sure the baby belonged to the man in the videos, and not me. She obviously denied that, but I didn't care. I told her to get out of my house and only come back if the paternity test shows that the baby is mine. I immediately called my lawyer and he arranged for the divorce papers. I was scared because I remembered her texts about wringing me dry in the divorce and running away with the money. But I wasn't going to let her do that in a million years. My entitled wife baby trapped me for my money. When I found out, I divorced her and now she's on the streets. After my sister-in-law came clean about my wife's cheating, I confronted her about it and kicked her out of my house. I knew that her pregnancy was actually a plan so she could take more of my money in the divorce, and demanded for a paternity test. After contacting my lawyer, I took a breath of relief and called my sister-in-law. I thanked her for telling me the truth even though she and my wife were sisters. But she said she didn't deserve my thanks. She covered up the affair for weeks and only came clean because she was overcome with guilt. But I argued that it didn't matter, and if not for her then I would have been trapped. I told her to come over to my house so I can treat her to dinner. But when she arrived, she just broke down in tears, telling me to forgive her. She said that she was once again reminded that I was a good man, and how she allowed my wife to hurt me. She said she hated her sister and hated how she supported adultery. I comforted her just like she had for me, and waited out her crying. What my wife did was her fault and her fault alone, and my sister-in-law was innocent in my opinion. So I told her once again, if you didn't tell me about my wife's actions, then she would have trapped me with the baby and stolen all my money in the divorce. She broke my heart, but you gave me an opportunity to break free and find my own happiness. After that, one thing led to another and we ended up sleeping together. I was hurting and felt bad about taking advantage of her, but we both wanted it to happen. The next day, I woke up with a newfound clarity and began working on the divorce. I had to show the text between the sisters as evidence. But since I had blocked my wife, she never had the chance to yell at me. She did yell at her sister, but I made sure that my sister-in-law wasn't affected by her comments. Things moved quickly after that. My wife was living with her parents and kept denying the paternity test, but the court forced her to take one. And just as I thought, I was not the father. It turns out, she was lying to her parents. So when I told them the truth and showed them the paternity test, they kicked her out immediately. After that, she went and took shelter with the man who was probably the father of the child. During this time, I kept finding comfort in my sister-in-law's arms. She was really sweet and completely unlike my wife, and appreciated everything I did for her. So I asked her out and to my surprise, she said yes. That being said, we kept our relationship a secret so as to not complicate the divorce even further. It was long and hurtful, but I did eventually win and was able to secure my assets. Although, that is likely down to my ex-wife's stupidity. The judge for our case actually laughed when he saw the texts and the result of the paternity test. He denied all of my wife's demands, and she walked away with nothing. I was now free to date whoever I wanted, and made sure that my new girlfriend got all the attention she deserved. Meanwhile, once my wife's boyfriend found out that she wasn't getting my money in the divorce, he left her and kicked her out of his house. She ended up with nowhere to go, and no money. If she had just stayed loyal to me, I would have treated her like royalty. But instead, she is now a homeless woman with no man to take care of her child. Want me to get the attention of your husband's CO? It's your funeral. So over the past few days, I've become friends with a retired Army officer that I'll call Belle. She's been delighting me with stories of her service and she shared this wonderful story that I think you all will enjoy. Names and some details have been changed to protect the innocent. Belle was a young second LT at her first posting. As she put it, my college diploma hadn't even arrived in the mail and I was scared as hell. Fortunately, she got on the N.C.O.'s good side and settled in pretty nicely. One afternoon, she was at work when in storms an officer's wife, looking like she was in the mood to cause hell. Belle keeps her head down, trying to stay busy when she hears the dreaded words. I'm talking to you, soldier. Belle looked up and saw the woman, let's call her Karen because why not, standing in front of her. Can I help you, ma'am? Belle asked. Yeah. I'm Major Mick, I'm so important's wife and I need to speak to Colonel Stone. Do you have an appointment? He's busy, Belle asked. Just go get him. I'll stand right here until you do. Belle looks around, wondering what the hell she's supposed to do. She didn't want to risk her job because Colonel Stone was known around the base for having a fierce temper. I'll have you knocked back down to private if you don't do as I say. Karen shouts. Now move. Wanting to get away, Belle got up and walked towards the Colonel's office, intending to get away for a long enough coffee break that Karen would forget. When she looks back, she sees Karen watching her like a hawk, so there goes that plan. Colonel Stone's door is closed and Belle knocks on the door. Yes? Colonel Stone barked. Sir. It's Second LT Belle Smith, she said. Come in. Belle opens the door, does the customary salute and he immediately notices how nervous she is. What is it? Major McKim's so important's wife is here and she wants to speak to you, Belle said, her voice squeaking. Does she have an appointment? She just said to go get you and she wouldn't leave until you saw her. I see. Did she threaten to knock you down to private? She did. Colonel Stone nodded and then said in a voice that scared Belle. Send her in. Belle salutes and then goes back to Karen. Karen looks smug. He'll see you now, Belle said. See? Now that wasn't so hard, was it? Karen said, strolling over to the Colonel's office. It's at this point that a first sergeant named Sanders comes in. He just sits down and as the office door closes, he counts down in a low voice 3, 2, 1. What the hell were you thinking? Colonel Stone shouted. For a good 5 minutes, he proceeded to tear Karen a new butthole, telling her that she isn't permitted to wear her husband's rank and that if she tries pulling anything like that ever again, her husband will be busted down to private faster than he could sneeze. Karen left the office like a bat out of hell, white as a sheet and quaking. Belle never saw her again but she and the major got divorced shortly afterwards. According to Belle, he realized what a liability she'd be to his career.